Hello everyone, it's History Behind the Warrior, and as always, welcome back to yet another Mortal Kombat video on the channel. With us today, having a bit of fun, and crafting a bit of a theory video that came to my mind whilst in the midst of my most recent Onaga short, where I came across an intro between Cetrion and Liu Kang, and it really got me thinking, is there some truth behind Liu Kang possibly being a descendant of the Dragon King Onaga?
You have Onaga's fire.
I'm not related to the Dragon King.
Mortals are always so self-assured.
Now bear in mind, this is all merely based off an intro, and the validity of these tend to be quite flimsy from time to time. Even so though, there always usually is a sliver of truth hidden beneath them. Something that I do wish to hopefully unravel today. Because as I began to look a little bit deeper into that well, there's shockingly a lot of very interesting ideas and concepts that do layer and kind of actually line up to this. In turn, painting Onaga's resurrection in a bit of a different light here. It helps add a new unexplored layer between these two characters, as well as somewhat bridges the relationship between the two. Because canonically, when you actually think about it, Liu Kang and Onaga never have at any point in Mortal Kombat's history have actually encountered nor interacted with each other, like at all across these three timelines. So something like this could serve as an interesting perspective of what could be and what could still be. Now, could this hold some truth in the future? Possibly, as I'm merely threading together ideas laid out on the table here by joining the dots together, maybe painting a clearer picture of what can become. So bear in mind that this is all a fun theory, and could 1,000,000% amount to nothing. Yet, even so, I do think this makes for a very fun deep dive video. But just a quick reminder that if you like what we do here and wish to see more, please don't forget to like this video, subscribe and comment, as it does appease our YouTube elder gods here. In short, it helps the channel out in the algorithm, and I'd really appreciate it. Anyway, let's begin and delve right into things. Now, when it does come to Onaga, I think we all pretty much know the infamous tale of the Dragon King at this point. The first and original ruler of Outworld who did unite its war-torn lands, placing it beneath his banner before he was then unceremoniously assassinated by the hands of his own advisor, Shao Kahn. Whilst this did mark the end for the Emperor, it was merely a climax for his first life, later returning in Deception as a formidable juggernaut through the assistance of Shinjinko. But something that I feel was largely overlooked is the legacy he left behind. I know we most commonly focus on his return in the 3D era, as well as that of the Conquest mode, but when you really think about it, the foundation that Onaga left behind was just as important, if not so more significant than his return. Without the rise of the Dragon King and his conquest of Outworld, it would have taken Shao millennia to have merged as many realms as he did, especially through the Mortal Kombat tournament. Thus, his death essentially served up Outworld on a silver platter to him, allowing the events of the game to transpire. And what's also intriguing is the amount of people he did inspire outside his empire, with his legacy being carried on through his holy men, known as the Lava Shrine Priests, aka the Dragon King's holy men, devoted zealots to the fallen emperor who protect the last existing dragon egg, believing that it could be utilized as a vessel of sorts for his return, something they were of course right about. And to guarantee that secrecy, they would forever remain out the public eye, residing deep beneath the surface in a lava shrine. And his influence doesn't actually end there, going on to inspire other figures of different realms, with Dagon, the demigod of Edenia, forging the infamous crime syndicate, the Red Dragons, taking a deep interest and infatuation of the Dragon King's power. But of course, this does naturally now bring up the question of how exactly does this tie into Liu Kang here? In what capacity could he be related to the Dragon King? Well, that's the interesting thing. We kind of don't know, and that's the mysterious nature of Liu Kang himself. Think about it, right? Of all the origins that have been fleshed out across 3 different timelines, giving us a greater understanding of where characters' powers derive from, his background beyond being an orphan is completely unknown. We know nothing of his heritage, which is why this all caught my attention in the first place. Like, for example, Johnny Cage's green energy was first teased in Armageddon, and then later fleshed out in his arcade ladder ending from MK9, and pushed to the forefront in Mortal Kombat X. For Smoke, we had no true origin of where his smoke abilities kinda derived from, due to how he changed and evolved from the original timeline. But in Mortal Kombat 9, through his arcade ladder ending, it was fleshed out that he had ties to a smoke demon known as an Enenra, something that would of course be canonized during Mortal Kombat X. So from what you can tell, Mortal Kombat 9 onwards was kind of pivotal in fleshing out the backgrounds of characters. But in every instance here and every game, Liu Kang's ancestry has always been largely avoided, and it made me wonder why exactly. But I do think it's simply because we've been conditioned to this character for decades now. We've overlooked the elephant in the room by simply seeing him as the Bruce Lee influenced character that shoots dragon fire and does the funny kick noises.
Fight.
So we have certain expectations of this character that allows us to overlook these variables. When we take into mind the large cast of characters we do have from Earthrealm, no one amongst his compatriots are able to emulate or even copy Dragon's Fire. We have 3 timelines to work with, and Liu Kang has always consistently been the only one to have inherited such power. Beyond that though, and their utilization of Dragon's Fire, what other signs could there be that tie that relationship together? Well, I think they've kind of been subtly teasing this for a very long time now. I don't believe it to be a mere coincidence that a reoccurring theme for Liu Kang from game to game is his ability to transform into a dragon for fatalities here. On the surface, it may seem like a small thing, but there's actually significance behind this creative decision. Although the Mortal Kombat logo can simply be chalked up to just being a logo, dragons themselves are a symbol of divinity in Mortal Kombat. They are of great significance and importance here, being seen as the physical embodiment of the elder gods themselves. Which is really why it's so important for me to point this out for Liu Kang here. Because again, when you think about it, those ties to divinity have always been there in some capacity. It's just as how the canon has changed, evolved, and expanded, it allows an idea like this to enter the realm of possibility. Also, in many ways, I think this creative decision is kind of poetic for Onaga. During his fall, Shao knew that in a one-on-one confrontation with Onaga at that time would most certainly spell in his defeat and demise. So to take the throne for himself, the 2B Khan would instead poison the Dragon King instead of dueling him in combat, not even wanting to risk that confrontation. And that's where this kind of all makes this a full circle moment. To be denied justice and combat in life, only to be unknowingly avenged in death. Yet, that's what could have made his attempt at a later time that much more sinister, where he's playing all sides to his advantage, as hypothetically, was it maybe always the intention of Onaga to return through Liu Kang? Till this very day, we only know of 2 contingency plans for the Dragon King's return. So what's to say there wasn't a third outside of manipulating Shigenko, and then having that dragon egg preserved? In many ways, Liu is the perfect vessel for, as following Shao's defeat, Edenia would peel away from Outward's grasp, and Shao himself would be greatly weakened from the events of MK3 onwards. So the world was ripe and his for the taking. In fact, the only reason I don't think Onaga acted on this was due to how soon Shinnok unleashed his assault before he could even encounter Liu. So again, following these events, why did he never merge with Liu Kang if he was the perfect candidate? Well, it may have been because Shigenko was still on his treasure hunt, and that, well, Liu Kang died. He died in both timelines, with the first being assassinated by Shang Tsung in the opening of Deadly Alliance, and then accidentally murdered by Raiden during the retelling of MK3, just before his appointed turn in that timeline during the cancelled MKX comic book line. Thus, in both eras, Liu Kang's never been alive as a complete being for Onaga to have a perfect host, making Reptile and Goro ideal but imperfect substitutes. And a fun little addition to this idea is the Hornbuckle character. For those of you who weren't born during the 90s, where the arcade era of games was kind of at its peak, Hornbuckle was a fan-dubbed background character that did reside in the pit, wearing a green color palette swap attire of Liu Kang. Why does this matter? Well, that's due to it being revealed later down the line, that he was in fact a member amongst Onaga's holy men, actually being responsible for kidnapping Blaze and placing him in the lava shrine. It's a small little thing, but I do think this kind of adds a whole new meaning to the title of the Chosen One to Liu Kang. And what other reason could there be for this choice here? Well, again, if we're theorizing and stringing together ideas, that's more than likely due to the One Being. For those unaware, the One Being is the end-all and be-all of all the realms, having been the primordial that was torn asunder by the Elder Gods in order to create the different planes of Mortal Kombat, effectively giving life to mortals and being the ground beneath their feet. Whilst physically dead, his influence does live on throughout the realms, encouraging his return through the merging of them and seeking a suitable host. It's why the Mortal Kombat tournament was created and is so important to the series. It's designed as a sort of contingency plan to slow him down, having it so the Elder Gods don't have to directly interfere, and making it possible for his host to perish. We see this through the likes of Shao Kahn, just as an example. So how does it relate to Onaga here? Well, despite the One Being's influence, Onaga in his first life was one of the very few that the One Being could not influence. Hence, his assassination at the hands of Shao Kahn, having him become his new suitable host. That's what makes Onaga's return in this section so interesting, for in death, he was no longer able to ward off the One Being's influence. Hence the pursuit of the Kamidogus, and even his own arcade ladder ending of that game, having him ascend to a complete form of the One Being. That's where I think Liu Kang comes into the picture, with Onaga possibly seeing Liu as the perfect host to escape the One Being's influence, returning him to form and relieving him of that voice in his ear. Liu's somewhat ties to divinity through Dragon's Fire is what I believe made him the perfect vessel. Now, as theories and ideas go, this is a fun one that encompasses a lot of ideas, and I do think this actually helps build the bridge between these two characters, uniting them in a way that's been largely unexplored across two timelines, which is kind of crazy to say out loud. But I also think this does help add a bit of a background and origin story to Liu Kang, something that's always been largely overlooked and unexplored, as maybe his offspring and bloodline could have derived from Onaga's cult, or maybe he himself was a child baptized from the blood within the dragon egg. We simply don't know, but something like this could really serve as an answer to that question. But was this always intended for either character? No, probably not at all, especially considering that Liu Kang's creation was spearheaded by John Tobias, and Onaga himself was created by John Vogel, two different heads of the creative team at the time. But even with that in mind, it is worth mentioning that Vogel has been part of the MK team since the first game. It's not like he was an outsider to the established canon. He merely built around the foundation and groundwork that was left behind from his predecessor. So I do kind of like to think that this neatly fits into that universe rather well. So with that said and everything covered here, that has been it for this fun analysis and theory video of Liu Kang's possible relation to the Dragon King. Although this all just merely comes from an intro, this was absolutely something that I had a lot of fun researching and putting together. Thus, I now raise the question to all of you of, what are your thoughts on this idea? Could you see this having some validity? Would you yourself like to see this take fruition at some point? Please do comment down below, as I'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings on this. And if you yourself have any ideas from intros that have been largely left unexplored, please do comment down below, as I'd love to tackle some of these more out-of-the-box ideas moving forward. But until the next one everyone, that's been it for me. Take care.